Hey, what's up everybody? This is Jose from Sun Life. In today's video, I'm going to tell you every single property that I have ever purchased, how much I paid for it, how much I sold it for, and my personal opinion on real estate investing. Now, every time I talk about real estate investing, somebody always comes onto the channel saying something along the lines of, "You're not a licensed financial advisor, you need to remove this video, blah, 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 blah." But again, there's a no association disclaimer on this channel, and there's a personal opinion disclaimer in the About section if you want to read more. But for the meantime, let's talk about the things I've bought, what I've sold them for, and what I've got out of it. It seems like every time I make a video kind of saying what I've experienced with some of my businesses, somebody always has to come along and say, "You're not a licensed real estate, or you're not licensed blah, 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 you're not a financial advisor, we're going to sue you," or something, because they don't really want the truth to get out there. Give you an example, there's a quote-unquote licensed financial advisor out of Texas who said that real estate in Southwest Florida was going to drop by 50% after Hurricane Ian. Didn't happen, and actually the opposite happened. And then he took a break from YouTube conveniently after that. This is not, but he's the licensed real estate, he's a licensed financial advisor. I'm just an idiot who is unlicensed to say it. But those are the things, the information you're getting from licensed financial advisors is real estate's going to drop 50% because of Hurricane Ian. Now, I am not a licensed financial advisor. I'm just giving you guys my personal opinion. You're just having a conversation with me. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I'm just telling you what I've done with my money and how it's worked out for me. And my wife is studying to be a realtor. These are all her notes. She's been studying for quite a while. Lots of notes on how to be a realtor. She's been studying that for a while. And what's got in the way, people have been asking me, why has it taken her so long to get her real estate license, is because we travel a lot for our YouTube channel. Every time we go on these like 30-day road trip, 15-day, 20-day, 30-day road trips, it kind of messes up her studying. She has to kind of start up again. So we're trying to put a lot of package into one single life. It's a lot. But let's get right to the video. Let's not mess around. So despite all of the legal framework to have this conversation with you guys, because apparently I'm not a licensed real estate advisor, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. And every time that I say the truth about real estate investing, based off my personal opinion, there's people that come after my video trying to tell me that I can't do this. And it gets pretty nasty. But the truth is that I have no more interest in obtaining real estate, because you'll make money on paper. So the first transaction that we made was a mobile home that was purchased for $95,000. Now, Katie and I didn't pay the whole $95,000. I think we put like $50,000. So in 2008, this property was purchased by our family for $95,000. And by 2020, we sold it for $107,500. So in theory, the property made, on paper, it looks like we bought the house for $95,000 and then we sold it for $107,000. So it shows like a $12,000-$13,000 profit. Like if you look at this property, you're like, well, they purchased it for this much money, they sold it for that much money, so we made a profit. Now, over that 2008 to 2020 period, we probably put more money into this house than we could even morally speak about, you could say, because you're paying property taxes, you're mowing the lawn, you're maintaining the property, you're paying property taxes. But this mobile home, when we got it, was uninhabitable. So our family paid $95,000 for a mobile home that was uninhabitable. And by the time we sold it, it was almost inhabitable. After spending what I did, we did the math. It took like a whole entire day to do the math, because I did make Katie do the math on this. And we were out, without talking about property taxes, just talking home repairs. So we're not including mowing the lawn. We're not talking about how much property taxes we paid. We're not talking about, fines and stuff like that. We're just talking material costs and labor. We calculated that we lost $74,000 on this property. So when you look at the property appraiser, we bought it for 95, we sold it for 107. So we literally had to put a roof on the mobile home. Now the great thing is I didn't have to get permits for any of this because I hired a lawyer who explained to me that my home was built before the building code in that county, which was 1968. The mobile home was built in 67. So it was exempt from having to comply to the building code, which means that because I'm not required to be up to a code, you couldn't enforce it, which means I didn't have to go through a permit process. That they have what they call a notice of commencement, NOC, which means if you're going to spend more than $2,500 at a time, you have to file for a notice of commencement on work. This is the only thing the county could really get me to do, but we never had that kind of money back then. We did it like $100, $500 at a time, but over a long time period, we spent about $10,000 to create a concrete slab foundation for the mobile home because the neighborhood flooded. So what we did is we took out the wood floors because the water would come right up to it and pretty much make it rot. So we took out the wood floors and put a concrete slab. That was like $10,000. My electrical post was hit by a lightning strike, and it went through about $1,000 worth of Sawzalls to cut it because it caramelized the wood and chainsaws couldn't cut. The only way we found of cutting it was with Sawzalls, which I went through 2 Milwaukee Sawzalls, if you could believe that, plus blades. More blades than you can imagine because it took like months to get this thing cut down because after the electrical post was hit by lightning, the materials that they used to pressure treat the wood caramelized and became, yeah. So after that went through, we had to hire somebody to put up a new post. We had to hire an electrician, a real licensed electrician to do this because this is not like you can do it yourself. Plus a new box and then new blah, 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 blah. We also had to raise the grade of the property, and I did this little by little. Every time I had $200, I would have a dump truck come by and dump a load. And little by little by little by little, I raised, not all at once, but little by little, I raised the grade of the property. And that was more money than you could think of. At points, we had to rent Bobcats. Every single stud, there were 1x1s, and we lived by the beach, so I put them up to 2x4s. So I think there was like $24,000 in wood. Anyways, this could go on forever. We lost $74,000 on that property. If you consider materials that we spent over the years to make this property inhabitable. However, when we go to sell this property, the person that bought the property to demolish it, to put something else on the lot, which was just mind-boggling. I just, my 10 years of my life building this house to sell it, to finally sell it to somebody who just demolished it, was just like my first clue that the real estate world makes absolutely no sense. Here I spent 10 years of my life trying to pay off this property with the family. We paid it off, we built it, sold it, and the person who bought it just demolished it, which just was eye-opening to me in the actual value of what real estate is. We buy a house in Alabama for $65,000. With the money, we got $107,000 cash. After real estate fees, we only got like $103,000 because they, the realtor, every time you buy and sell a property, you have to pay a realtor commission fees, blah, blah, blah. Luckily, when I sold this property, which took 2 years to sell, when I sold the property, there was no realtor. Like 2 or 3 realtors had contracts expire on them trying to sell this house. So realtors couldn't sell this house. I got the best realtor in Naples at the time, in North Naples at the time, to list the property. She couldn't sell it. She couldn't sell the property. Nobody would. I mean, I'm telling you, when this realtor and her contract expired, it was like I couldn't believe that this realtor couldn't sell this property. But her contract expires, and one day I'm outside, like, forgot about selling the house, wasn't even trying to sell it anymore. And a BMW pulls up and the guy goes, "Hey man, I looked at your property about like 2 years ago or something, been on the market forever." And he goes, "Did your contracts expire?" I say, "Yeah, they're expired." He says, "Good, you don't have to pay a fee. I'll run all the paperwork." and I got $103,000 out the door because you still have to pay title company this and that. At the end of the day, we grabbed our $103,000. We moved to Alabama. We paid $65,000 for the house. Now, in 1 year and 1 day, we had to wait a year and a day to resell the property. Alabama was a nightmare, so we got out of that as soon as possible. 1 year and 1 day after buying that property, we get $136,000. So in theory, if I bought it for 65 and I sold it for 136, I more than doubled my money in 1 year. That sounds like a profit, doesn't it? Well, let me explain to you why it wasn't a profit. The reason it wasn't a profit was because the house needed a roof, which was like $7,000 or $8,000. It needed drywall. I mean, it needed. We spent probably close to what we got into the house. I fenced in the whole property. I cut down trees that were in the wrong places. I put in landscaping rocks, palm trees. I took debris to the landfill. This property was littered. I moved sheds around. I put new appliances. I put new flooring. Walls, paint. You have no idea. Water heater. The amount of money that I spent on this property was also like a ridiculous amount of money, which means that even though on paper, once again, on paper, you said, well, you bought it for 65, you sold it for 136, you made a huge profit. Well, here's what you don't know. When you do the math, I quite literally barely broke even, but there's more. You have to pay 6% to a realtor to sell a property. So between realtor, title, and other fees, now the real estate company in Alabama used no lube on us. They took $18,000. And then they went on to argue amongst each other on how they were going to split the money they stole from me practically, because, that's another story. I think I have to make a video on that. That was a nightmare. If we start talking about how much price tag you can put on a nightmare, then that's a whole different video as well. But anyways, at the end of the day, I think the contract, we had to go back and sign it like 24 different times because after we did the contract, the realtors, Alabama has this thing called dual agency. It's not illegal in most states, but they're allowed to do that in Alabama. At the end of the day, in Alabama, the contract went back 24 times or something like that because they were arguing amongst each other on how they were going to split the money. There's times where one realtor got taken out of the picture. They're both within the same broker. One realtor would get taken out, the other would get put in, and then eventually I don't know who got fired or what happened, but total nightmare. At the end of the day, that they took $18,000 from us just for real estate fees. So when you throw in all that I did, I probably broke even. I think for tax purposes, we recorded about a $16,000 profit. I'm just giving you a number off the top of my head. So that sounds like a profit. On paper, it looks like a profit, but it's really not. Now, we haven't talked about mowing the lawn, paying property taxes. That property that I sold in Naples, property taxes this year were almost just short of $2,000. So, that's a whole different thing though. We had it homesteaded, it's not homesteaded now, but they're paying $2,000 for property taxes now. Property in Alabama was like $600. Anyways, so here's where we have a problem. I had to stay in this house in Alabama for 1 year to sell it. At 3 to 4 months, I was ready to leave and escape. I had to stay there for 8 months longer than I wanted because, if we would have took just we would have had to pay taxes on the whole number. Had we sold the house before the 1 year period, we would have had to pay an incredibly large number in taxes. So it was about a year's salary for me at the time. So I was like, I can't do it. I have to keep staying until the 1 year. And after 1 year, then the taxes were less and We still had to pay taxes on that. It was 4 or 5,000. I can't remember the numbers, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't call that a profit at all. It was the property itself, its location, the neighbors that made us have to move somewhere else. So if we take that into consideration, then in my opinion, the moving costs in and out, can't really put this on paper, but to me, having to leave that property was a real estate transaction type of thing. And I had more cars. I moved back to Florida with just what I could haul in a U-Haul. I had vehicles on the property that I had to give away. I gave away vehicles, equipment. I had to sell stuff. I mean, I created a whole life in Alabama. And when I had to move, I lost personal property because of the real estate transaction. And the personal property that I lost was trailers, trucks, several vehicles. I had just accumulated a lot of material things on that property. And the real estate transaction made me lose personal property. Where when we moved back to Florida, all I could take with me was a U-Haul. And I had amassed property full of land, trees, materials. I had bartered a lot of stuff, and I had a lot that I lost. So there's no way that, even though on paper it looks like I won money on that transaction, I really didn't. I lost a lot. But I left Alabama. The good thing was that out the door, I walked into this situation with $103,000, and I walked out with 118. So there was a profit, and I had one vehicle, the Yukon. When I left Florida, I had the old truck. I left the Yukon, that was worth more. So in theory, I walked in and out of this situation with possibly, it's hard because with the Alabama transaction, my business and my personal get attached because my real estate transaction affected my personal life. So it's really hard to gauge what I win and lost. But to make the long story short, it's not a win. It really isn't. I mean, it was probably one of the biggest failures of my life. And the biggest loss was that real estate prices did this. And that $118,000 that I walked away from with Alabama at the time were worth less than $60,000 when I left Naples. So if you think about it, the 118 that I walked out of Alabama with would buy me what 60 or 80,000 would have bought me when I left Florida, which means that now that I had to move back to Florida, my money was worth so much little because of appreciation that even though monetarily it's a bigger figure, in reality, due to appreciation, I was at a huge loss because of appreciation. Like real value of the dollar had changed significantly, maybe 30 or 40%. So now I'm walking out of this with, let's say, $103,000, $13,000, $15,000 more. But those $15,000, I mean, people were offering $20,000, $40,000 above asking on anything. Sometimes 50 and 60 above asking. So that $15,000 net gain was really insignificant. So I would consider that a huge loss. And these are properties that I'm living in, by the way. So I realized that there's a lot of liability with owning a structure you live in. So I bought some land when I went back to Florida. I bought a piece of land on Lehigh Acres for $17,500. And that piece of land, we sold it for $20,000. Again, on paper, that looks like, oh, you made $2,500 on paper. Except we paid property taxes for 2 years, which that was $500. I know I spent $500 with two Guatemalans to help me clear the lot when I first initially bought it, just to find the land. Then I paid, I think it was $1,400 to a guy to clear the lot. I probably spent about $1,200 in plants, most of which died in a frost we had. To make the long story short, on paper I made $2,500, but in reality, this real estate transaction was pretty much just, it did nothing for us. I might have realistically lost maybe $500, or I could have made $700. However you look at it, it wasn't worth the hassle of buying a property and selling it and tying up so much money into something that, if the market, I mean, that lot could have gone from $17,000 to $4,000 in a month, if the market had flipped. So the liability to make, let's assume I made $750 on that transaction. The liability that I took to I could have lost, 12,000 to make 700. It was like, it's like rolling the dice or something. The odds are definitely stacked against you. I'm gonna say, just based off my real estate transactions that I've had, I have no intentions in ever buying real estate for a while. But I will tell you this: if I had bought a house, pay attention. So me, I'm no longer interested in buying real estate. Now, I did grab some of that $118,000 in Florida, and I bought a pickup truck for $26,000. And I got $22,000 out of it. And I had a great time with the pickup truck, and I recovered most of my money, made memories that will last a lifetime. I would almost rather lose $4,000 doing something that I like than make 700 doing a completely dangerous, scary, uncomfortable real estate transaction. On the way in and on the way out, you're always paying a realtor. Oh, and by the way, the only person who really made money on that lot was a realtor and her commission fee at the beginning, and the realtor and her commission fee at the end. So that lot in Lehigh, I didn't make any money, but both realtors made money. So if you want to make money in real estate, get yourself a real estate license and start charging other people for their buying and selling, because it doesn't seem like none of these properties that I have ever, now it sounds good to say, hey bro, I made money on paper. Like, I bought this for 65, I sold it for one, whatever. It sounds pretty on paper. Now, what I was able to do with this money by putting it into real estate. So just pay attention as a poor person who's never had real estate, somebody who's never really had that much. But what I was able to do is that I was able to incrementally buy a property, put money into it, and my bubble kept growing and growing and growing. I was able to increment my net worth significantly. And the plan was to continue doing that until I could work myself into a property that was worth $200,000 or $300,000, all while not paying rent. So that was the plan. However, life does not always work out the way you want or think it will. We are now in an apartment in Sarasota paying $2,000 a month in rent. So don't think things are going to work out the way you want. So in my personal experience, buying and selling real estate has been scary. Countless nights of sleep lost, risk taken, huge amounts of money. And the only person who I really feel has benefited from me doing all these transactions are the realtors who brokers and realtors who made all in title companies. I think they've made a lot of money off me over the years. I mean, in Naples, luckily they were not part of the equation, but in Alabama, 18,000. In Lehigh Acres, about maybe 2,000-3,000. I can say that over the last 3 years, I've probably given title companies and realtors over $25,000, $26,000, which is the rent that I'm going to pay here for 2 years or whatever, or for a year and a half, whatever. It doesn't matter. I would rather spend the money living in a nice apartment than giving it to a realtor or a title company. So I'm not really going to tell you that I've made money on real estate. Like, I used to look at it as I made money. Oh, I bought it for this much, sold it for that much, bought it for this much, sold it for that much. And I did balloon myself up to $118,000 at one point with these real estate transactions, cash money, all in your pocket, ready to go. But there's a truth to that, is that if I had just been renting during that whole time period, and instead of if I was just renting and all that money had just been stacking up, my net worth would probably be $200,000 or $300,000 cash. But because I was buying tile, refrigerators, roofing material, wood, nails, hurricane straps, all that money was just blown away. If you're not a disciplined person, you could definitely balloon yourself into $250,000 in real estate doing that, starting off with a mobile home. But realistically, if you're more disciplined, you can just move into a decent apartment, save up that money, and even though you're not, but whatever. At the end of the day, I don't think I made any money on real estate. Now, let's backtrack. If instead of buying $100,000 mole, $95,000 mole home in Naples, we had bought a CBS in Lehigh Acres, that's concrete block structure, it would have been worth 170. If in the right moment, let's say 2017, 2019, I had sold that property, I would have bought a house in Spring Hill, Florida. And that house with that money would have then been worth $300,000 or $400,000 today. But if we knew yesterday's lottery numbers, wouldn't be we'd all be millionaires. So there's no real. I could have bought a house instead of a mobile home. I could have sold that house in Lehigh, bought a house in Spring Hill, and in theory now my equity would be $400,000 or $350,000 in equity. Which in theory, what is equity? I mean, you can't touch it, you can't use it, and if you do, it's wrong. I mean, real estate, real estate is like this, man. Look, if you have $100,000 and you have no way of managing $100,000, you have a job, you can use that $100,000 to leverage into a property. Hopefully, that property appreciates, and you're able to generate equity off that, sell the property and turn it into cash. Great, beautiful. In theory. Realistically though, if you have $100,000 and you don't have a job, and you have a YouTube channel, let's say, or a barbershop, you can generate income. Now here's the problem. And this is what nobody will tell you. Nobody will tell you this. Nobody talks about this. If you have $1.5 million, and let's say you're a hairstylist, you have your own hairstyling business. You're making $200,000 a year as a hairstylist, but you only need $87,000 to operate this business. Okay? The other $1.2 million you have in the bank is completely doing nothing. So what real estate does, it gives you the opportunity to grab $500,000, $1.2 million, get a hold of an asset, hire a managing company that'll charge you, a flat fee or a percentage. Either way, you're still making money. So me buying empty lots in Lehigh, a ghetto house in Alabama, or a trailer in Naples, that's not real estate money. That is poor. Those are the breadcrumbs. There's no profit to be made in the breadcrumbs, okay? Now, it's different when you have $1.2 million. You have $1.2 million now. You can buy a house for $1.2 million. And again, you're only able to manage $80,000 or $100,000. Like every single year, like I have a YouTube channel, and if I had to spend $100,000 a year to create content, even if it would generate more than that, I couldn't spend it. It takes somebody who's like a slave to themselves or a business to be able to spend $200,000 or have 4 or 5 people that you can manage. Either way, you're going to have to be managing people that are going to be managing your assets, because directly you just can't manage millions of dollars worth of assets unless you have some unique trade that's out there. But in most trades, like I'm as a YouTuber or as a junk removal company or whatever other business is out there, the only way you're really going to manage millions of dollars is if you are managing the people who are managing subsidies in small portions of that business. You're directly hiring somebody else, but the productivity of a worker is maybe $160,000 a year of investment per person. So if you have 10 employees and you're able to personally manage each one of those employees, then in theory, yes, you could manage $1.6 million, but you'd have to have a business where you can do that. And you would be a servant to managing the people that are managing your assets or something. So the average person that has $1 million can go, or let's say in this case, $1.2 million, buy $1.2 million of real estate. Now, let's say 2 years from that point, somebody is willing to pay 1.4. You spent $40,000 managing that property, so now you're looking at, $160,000 profit. You take it. Now, you buy 2 properties now for $700,000. You grab your 1.4, you buy 2 properties for $700,000. They both appreciate to $1 million. $300,000, you just made $600,000. Again, you give a little piece of breadcrumbs to the property managers, and that way, real estate allows people who have huge chunks of money that are not manageable, easily manageable, to be able to make more money. But here's the problem. The person that has $2 million, now let's say you've done that process and you've made $2 million, you're not really able to manage $2 million directly through your own hands. Maybe a jeweler, I mean, there might be trades out there where you can manage a lot of money. But the average person, like, right now, if I had $118,000 like I did a year ago, and I was going to use it just to blow up my YouTube channel, you couldn't spend it in a one year. How do you even spend that? Like, even if you're traveling, it's not possible to spend that kind of money, So real estate allows people that have a lot of money to get a hold of assets that are going to, make them money. And the harder it gets to do business. Now you have COVID, you have this and that, all these things that business has become infinitely complicated between infrastructure lines, access to fuel, availability of anything you need. COVID really messed up the whole world. So now that business becomes even more difficult to manage, it's even easier to throw those money into assets like real estate. So for those people, it is definitely profitable. But for me and you, a regular working class person with $100,000, we're just spinning our wheels. We're not making money. Now, if I was smart, could have grabbed that $100,000 and leveraged myself into a $400,000 house. The $400,000 house could have gone up to $600,000 and continue to leverage into more expensive properties. All the while, let's not even talk about how much time I spent carrying materials, buying materials, hiring plumbers, hiring roofers, hiring electricians. All that time I could have spent it on myself and created a source of income while my money is working over here. And that is how you really get to the money in real estate. But if you're just buying a $17,000 lot and then you sell it for 24, and you're just spinning your wheels. You're paying realtors, you're paying title companies, you're paying property taxes, and you're putting yourself under so much liability. I do think that real estate is a great way to just hold some money if you're stupid and dumb like I am, and they're going to spend it on like I said, just stupid stuff, then in that case, it would make sense. But at the end of the day, I'm not really satisfied with any of the real estate transactions that I've done. And I don't think I've made any money. And the notion that you're going to make money in real estate, if you have a lot of money, you can make a lot of money. But if you just have a small little bit of money, you're wasting your time. And invest that money in yourself, start living good. And now there's this whole thing on YouTube where every YouTuber is a real estate guy and talking about real estate and invest here, buy here, sell there. People are moving across the country to places they've never been before. Just be happy with what you got. Enjoy what you have. And then most of all, invest in yourself, because that's really the only thing that's really valuable is yourself. Checking out, that's my personal opinion of how real estate works and how much money and time I've wasted messing around with properties that on paper look like a profit, but in reality are just a waste of time for everybody except for the realtors and the title company.